Hi everyone, today we're going to be going over some of the reasons why the Democrats underperformed in the Senate and really across the board. So let's go ahead and take a look here. First reason, we have split ticket voting, alright? Split ticket voting was something that was very hurtful to the Democrats in some of these key Senate races. And really, the lack of split ticket voting was also a drawback in other more stretched races. So I'll get to that other point in a second. But firstly, when you look at a state like Maine, right, that's a good example. Split ticket voting, really cost Sarah Gideon the Senate race in Maine. Joe Biden won the presidency in Maine. Both of the Democratic members of Congress, including one swing district, Jared Golden, they both won their re-election. And then Susan Collins, last Republican in the Northeast delegation out of all the House and Senate, the last Republican out of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. All those states, there's just one Republican left in the House and Senate, and Democrats really thought they could knock her off, but they were not able to do that because of split ticket voting. A lot of those more rural areas in Maine voted for Joe Biden on the presidency and Susan Collins in the Senate, and this is a massive blow to the Democrats, who really thought they had a perfect candidate there, Sarah Gideon, Speaker of the House, good name recognition. They thought, finally, blue wave year. She voted for Brett Kavanaugh. This is it. We can finally get rid of Susan Collins, who's been a thorn in the Democratic side for so long when they're trying to get moderates across to pass legislation. And then they fail, all right? And they fail by quite a lot. I believe Susan Collins lost by about 6 percentage points, which is quite a lot. So split ticket voting, a lot of those voters in Maine voted for the Republicans, for the Senate, and then for the Democrats in the White House. Maybe that could have something to do with, they want to check on power, and they think Susan Collins would be a good moderate member to check Biden's power, whereas Sarah Gideon would just be a Democratic stamp on everything. Maybe that's something. Maybe it's just that they had so much money thrown towards Sarah Gideon, and then they just thought, you know what? Let's show the Democrats that we can't take them for granted. They can't take us for granted, and we'll elect Susan Collins. Maybe it was the vote to save the Affordable Care Act that held her on by a thread. Any one of those could have swung it, but split ticket voting was a major beneficiary for the Republicans in blue state Maine. However, split ticket voting, the lack of split ticket voting was also a major drawback in swing states, such as the state of South Carolina, such as the state of Kentucky, such as the state of Kansas, such as the state of Montana, the state of Alaska, the state of Texas. All those states, the Democrats kind of knew, maybe we'll lose the presidency in those states, but we really have strong candidates in the Senate and we might be able to win. But no, basically all those senators just ran even, or maybe slightly ahead of Biden. And all those polls that came out of those states that showed it was tied, with the exception of Texas. Sorry, Texas maybe is in a different category, but all those polls in South Carolina that showed it was tied, nowhere near tied in the eventual outcome, an overwhelming win for South Carolina Republican Lindsey Graham. Same thing in the state of Alaska, in Montana, in Kansas, all these states where Democrats had good recruit candidates, and they thought they could outrun Biden on the ticket, and they didn't. And so that was really hurting the Democrats. And really, the Democrats, they only won in the state of Colorado and in the state of Arizona. And those two states really, those were pretty expected to go to the Democrats, over 80% chance. And they lost North Carolina, which was favored for them. They lost Maine, which was favored for them. But even those, we could understand. But out of all of those states where it was, all the polls showed it was even, the Democrats didn't get any of them and just got completely wiped out, which wasn't good at all. So split ticket voting, one of the reasons in both directions why the Democrats underperformed. Alright, moving on to the next page, if it's going to let us. It always seems to have a bit of an issue. Alright, second thing is wasting money, alright? Democrats wasted a lot of money this election cycle on candidates who really, in hindsight, didn't have much of a chance. The Democrats wasted money in states like Kentucky, Amy McGrath losing by like 30 percentage points. That race had over $100 million, I believe, in the Kentucky Senate race to try and oust Mitch McConnell. That was a massive waste of money. If all that money went into a state that was more reachable but a bit lower profile, maybe a North Carolina or something, then, I mean, definitely the Democrats might be on their way to taking the Senate right now. States like South Carolina, I mean, you know, in hindsight, we should have known that that state was very unlikely to go the Democrats' way. $100 million thrown into Jamie Harris in the last few weeks of the campaign, just getting swarmed in money there down in South Carolina. It's a cheap media market, but it didn't help him at all. He was viewed as kind of an out-of-touch coastal liberal, and he couldn't win. He couldn't pull it off. You look at states like, Texas. The Democrats wasted quite a bit of money on that state. The state of Maine, of course, is the classic example people want to bring up. But overall, money and resources were not spent in very good ways. I think the Democrats need to have a complete reorientation of their strategies to get more reachable states, rather than trying to just throw $100 million at Jamie Harrison in the final few weeks, or throw $50 million or more at Amy McGrath, or throw money at Sarah Gideon, or just swarm these people, and they didn't end up winning. It doesn't seem that those issues paid off. Speaking of issues, the Democrats were running away from popular issues. This was a major problem, and I see it also in the Georgia Senate race. If you look at where is it? Here, right? You look at Medicare for all. 69% of voters support Medicare for all. 56% of voters support Medicare for all. Medicare for all reaches a 9-month high, rose 9 points between February and March. You look at drug restrictions in the generic ballot, right? Montana, Arizona, New Jersey, South Dakota, all have approved marijuana ballot measures, CNN projects, and Oregon voted to decriminalize all drugs and allow psilocybin mushrooms, I believe, for mental health treatment. You look at the Fight for 15. 2/3 of Americans favor raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Florida voted to raise it just now. And so you can see all these different things. It doesn't seem that the Democrats were able to really embrace those issues. And then you look at people like Katie Porter, who ran on a leftist platform in a swing district. She ended up being just fine, all right? All these people who were running away from Medicare for all, they lost. And then all these people who were running to Medicare for all, they actually won. You look at, there's a tweet going around right now that shows that all of these people in swing districts who backed Medicare for all, they won. People like Katie Porter, Jared Golden, Matt Cartwright, I think, and a few other people, they backed Medicare for all and they won. And then you look at people like, people like Donna Shalala, look at people like Yoshi Torres Small. These are people who didn't vote for Medicare for all, and then they ended up losing their elections. Fourth, bad organization and on-the-ground door-knocking. This is a major problem. Bad organization, and the Democrats did not do on-the-ground door-knocking, which I think really hurt them in the end. Organization-wise, I mean, their digital strategy was okay. Organization, again, could be improved. A lot of groups trying to organize for the Democrats. I think it would probably be easier if they organized it all under one big umbrella, rather than having like 50 different groups going out there for Biden. And then how can the Democrats improve moving forward? So improved organization, I just talked about. Again, running away from popular issues. We look down the line here. Medicare for all, drug legalization, decriminalization, these kind of states. I think Oregon, if you had a vote to like decriminalize all drugs, I don't know if that would pass in a red state, but like decriminalize or legalize marijuana, I think would pass. And then this again, I don't know if that would pass again. 5 for 15, I still do not understand why politicians are not talking about how they want to raise the minimum wage. Like, seriously, like, who opposes raising the minimum wage? Only, like, business owners, right? 2/3 of Americans favor raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. A lot of Democratic politicians support this, or at least support get to, like, $12.50 or something. $12, raising it to $12.50. But even Joe Biden supports raising it to $15. But even if you're only for $12.50, talk about how you want to raise it to $12.50. Talk about how you want to raise it to $13.50. Talk about how you want to raise it to $15 an hour. Maybe 20 is getting a bit high, you know. I think Rashida Tlaib wants to raise it to $20, but maybe that's a bit excessive for now. But 5 for 15, I mean, really, all the Democratic politicians should be embracing this. I do not understand why they are not talking about how they want to raise the minimum wage. Like, this is something that everyone agrees on, right? Even Republicans want to raise the minimum wage. This is basic stuff. Like, why don't you talk about how you want to raise the minimum wage? Get called a socialist. People like raising the minimum wage. Like, who doesn't? I mean, it is just so ridiculous. That's really something that I think really the Democrats need to improve on. Talk about how if you're scared of Medicare for all, I would understand that, even though the data suggests otherwise. But like raising the wage, like who doesn't want to raise the wage, right? Who doesn't want to legalize, decriminalize drugs? These are popular issues, and if you run on them, you're gonna win. All right, this is just basic level stuff. All right. 5 for 15 really should be at the forefront of these kind of campaigns. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. I mean, why aren't you talking about how you want to raise people's wages? It's just, I mean, basic level stuff. And then here you see, linking to that, you need to focus on kitchen table issues in terms of how the Democrats improve. Kitchen table issues over how Trump is bad. And Trump is bad is, I mean, it's okay for riling up the base, but I think kitchen table issues, that's where you're going to get those independents. That's where you're going to get your non-voters. Talk about healthcare, talk about, climate change, talk about taxes, talk about Social Security and Medicare, right? Talk about 5 for 15, right? This is basic level stuff you should be talking about instead of, Joe Biden's key message. I think I only heard him talk about how he wants to raise the minimum wage in the second debate, and that's only when it was brought up. Like, he never... Sorry, I'm getting off track here, but it's just really, I think, something that's really poor. So kitchen table issues, very important to focus on, and then don't waste money. And then later we're going to be talking about what's the future of the Republican Party, which will be very interesting. So that's it for today's video, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Good night.